Empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sara Khaki and Shawna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. I'm attorney Sara Khaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group and joined by our very own managing partner, Shawna Woods. Today's episode, we're going to battle the heavy topic of what to do when you feel like the system just doesn't care. And that system could mean the legal system and the divorce process, the judge, the experts, the guardian ad litem at times. And how do you navigate that? Shawna, I say it's a heavy topic because it's very deflating for the client. For a client who's put in forget the massive financial investment, but the emotional investment, the time investment, the promises they've made to themselves, the deals they've made between themselves and God at night as they made this decision to go on this legal journey to change the course of perhaps their children's lives or their own lives. And they've built out the whole scenario in their head. They've built out the future. They've built out the vision. And they come up against this wall that doesn't have a lot of emotion in it. It doesn't have always a lot of empathy in it. And it doesn't have a lot of redemption for what you've put in. You've recently, I think, felt this for a client and felt the client experiencing it. And I remember it was a heavy day for you.
Yes. It was a very disappointing day. And I do want to say for the most part, I think the system really does work. And so I don't think that this is an overreaching every county, every judge issue. And I don't necessarily think that in particular, this judge who I felt gave a very dismissive hearing to a very deserving client, to a very hard case. So for the most part, I think our system tries really hard. We're made of individuals who have our own weaknesses, our own down days. We have our own faults, and we always bring that to work, right? And I think it's been really important to remember that as we're doing our jobs, and all of us in the system, our judges, our deputies at the courthouse, all court reporters, our guardians, everybody makes a difference in the very essence of someone's life when we are bringing you a case this heavy, whether it is a divorce case, whether it's a child custody case. This may be a Tuesday at work for you. And you may go home and eat dinner with your loved ones and say, I just heard yap, yap, yap all day long. I don't know why people just can't get along, right? And that was your Tuesday. But for them, this was a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
In their lives and the lives of their children. And I think what everybody wants across the board, and especially clients going through this very difficult situation, is to feel heard.
Yes.
And I think that's really the crux of things, because I can tell people, yes, it didn't come out in your favor, but the system worked. You were heard and they didn't decide in your favor. But what I feel like the system doesn't care, or it's presenting it doesn't care, is because they're looking at us like, we don't want you here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not interested in hearing what you have to say. I think it's very disheartening to our clients, especially clients who have been in really toxic relationships, who have been the person who has been the quieter one, the one who's taken it for
And it's taken so much courage to stand up.
So much courage to call our firm or call a firm and say, I'm thinking about a divorce. That first step, and then they get to our office and, okay, they've got a shot of encouragement. And it is always our intention to settle. And I do think that some courts feel like if they're rude to us or mean to us, it'll encourage settlement. But we go back to that and I think we've talked about this before, if we don't have the option of taking it to a court that's going to at least hear us, it's the dream of the toxic person. They get to be in control.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't get what you wanted from me, and everybody's telling you just suck it up. Right? And now I'm back in control. And I think it's really disheartening for our clients. And it's like, if you don't mind, I'd really like to share just a little brief of the feeling we got when we walked in the courtroom, because I would hope that if we do have listeners out there that are part of the court system, maybe just hear a little bit from our side. When we walked in the court, everyone from the deputy to the staff attorney to the court reporter let us know how much they hated family law.
Wow. And this was a case with a very young child involved.
A baby involved. And that was from the get-go. It was, why are you here? Why are you bothering us? And quite frankly, and I'm not going to narrow it down to which judge or anything like this, but this is a judge who was designated to sit and hear cases of family law matters. And their entire staff, it was said in open court how much they hated family law, how much they thought we just went on and on about things that were not important. And what that said to me is, if their staff is saying that, they're getting it from the top.
It's a leadership issue.
It is a leadership issue. And you let my very young client know from the get-go that her very real concerns were not your concerns. And I'd be fine if they don't agree and they have a different take on a viewpoint. But what I really hate is the dismissive nature in which some courts view family law. Now, I'm a redhead, and we jokingly say family law is like the redhead stepchild. And there's so many family law attorneys out there who say, and deservedly so, right?
Yes.
As if they're buying into this system that doesn't care about us, and we know it. Therefore, we better settle, right? So I think that, one, it's a very disheartening approach. And what I would say to the clients is, one, thankfully that is few and far between.
That's true. I think most judges in family law understand that they are here to represent the state's interest in the child, especially, and not every family law case has a minor child, but when it does, it is the judge's role is heightened because there is a duty to look out for the state's interest.
And I think they all think, and I do think that most of the judges think best interest of the child. Yes, we're going to put this forth. But I think you really have to listen to the particular family's needs and the family's dynamics, right? Because there's so many different types of families,
right,
and different viewpoints. And it's not just for judges. You've probably heard me talk about guardian ad litems a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love, guardians because they do really good work most of the time.
Most of the time.
And I've become friends with, if you don't mind saying her name, Diane Woods, who is a very well-known guardian who is taking a step back because thankfully it's time of her life where she can and wants to. But she ran, the guardian ad litem program in Cobb, and her and I have a lot of philosophical conversations about what a guardian ad litem is for. And just for the listener, a guardian ad litem is often appointed to represent the best interests of child or children in a divorce case where there's custody issues. And very well-trained guardians come in there and are able to put their own thoughts on religion and
biases. Yeah,
on biases. Thank you, Sarah. They're able to put those aside. But I do think that there are definitely some people out there who become guardians for the wrong reason, because guardians are very lauded in a lot of groups, and we respect them. And most of the time, the judges will go with what they want. They don't really have to argue a whole lot.
Right.
It's a hard job, but I think it's a very rewarding job. But I also think it can draw people who think that their idea of family is the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do when we have one?
What do you do?
That's a good question. Because it is very hard to show bias of a guardian. So I think that before we get to the stage of asking for a guardian, one, do we need one?
Right.
Right. That goes back to strategy. Do we really need one in this case? Do we really need someone else making a recommendation to the court? Two, do we have a say-so in who that's going to be?
Right.
And there are a lot of situations in which we're not asking for a guardian, but a judge will appoint one, and we don't often have those choices. So in those particular situations, it is very circumspect how much information, right, that you want to share with somebody who has no privilege with you, who's judging you for perhaps doing things that would be completely normal in your cultural, in your religion, even in your family, but the other person learned how to play the guardian.
Right. Right. Oh, we see it a lot. I mean, we see guardians changing the dynamic of a case completely. And it is a bit of, from a advocacy standpoint, giving up a bit of control of the case when you're bringing in a guardian, right? Especially if you have a relationship with the judge, you know the judge, and then now it could be a complete wild card. And guardians is another example of an outlier situation where we hear a client say they just didn't care. And I think it's almost more disheartening than the judge sometimes, because when a guardian comes in, it's because the judge is saying, or telling the client, we need somebody that's an expert on the best interest of the child and is an expert on how to review all of these issues and make a recommendation to the judge. So when I put my mom hat on and somebody would say that to me, I'm thinking of somebody who genuinely cares about children, has studied children, studied how dynamic and complex different households can be and the different needs of children, the full range of that. And when you have somebody come in that doesn't review all the information, that the mom might tell them, hey, there is these recordings of, dad screaming at the child, or the father is saying, hey, you need to ask about the time when, she put my child in the closet to sleep at night. And these facts do not even make it to the guardian's report or do not even get investigated. It can be so disheartening for the client. They lose so much trust in the system, and you have given up a big piece of control as an attorney. And sometimes not be your own decision, because like you said, the judge comes in. And Shawna, the other player in the system that we hear a lot about is the mediator.
Yes.
The mediator not caring.
And this is an interesting dynamic. And we hear this a bit more. And I focus kind of on the guardian and the judge, because those are the ultimate, guardian isn't a decision maker, but has a lot of influence.
Right.
A mediator doesn't really have a decision.
Right.
But they can be very disheartening, even in that mediation where they're, and I know the tactic. A tactic is to try to challenge somebody's viewpoint or challenge them to get them to move off a needle, to get them closer to the middle. Because you have to keep in mind, a mediator's job is simply to reach a settlement.
Right.
Right. Their job isn't to advocate what's best for you or your children or anyone. They get kudos when they get things settled.
Right.
Right. Settlement's great if it's good. But I do think there's a lot of mediators who come in with the only idea that if I don't settle this case, I'm not successful. So they start pushing on the one who they think will move.
The one that is susceptible to the pressure.
Right. And so if they can move that needle, then they're successful. Right. So I think that part of it, Sara and I are already here. The people who work with us are already here. Is changing the dialogue and the framework about what family law is. We're not that quote unquote redheaded stepchild in the corner that nobody wants to deal with. What family law really is the ability to affect someone else's life in a positive manner, even when you will have to disagree with them or give them bad news. Right? The best people that I have seen who do this say, I hear where you're coming from. Let me tell you my disagreements, and I have to be the one to decide this. Right? That is an excellent way to approach a decision that's not going to go in someone's favor. Because I will take a loss in court if we are being heard, but to feel that kind of dismissive, you weren't even invited here in the first place, is such a disservice to all the dads and the moms out there and to the children out there who are dependent upon the system when they can't reach resolution. And I do want to say, for the most part, I think our system works. For the most part, I think we have really good people in it, but there are significantly enough that I hope that when we think about who our judges are and who we think about who we want them to be, that we are looking at them and saying, what would happen if I was in front of you with my issue? Right. Are you leading from a place of, and this goes for mediators, guardians, and judges, are you coming from a place of ego and arrogance and ignorance? Or are you coming from a place of, I may learn something here today?
I mean, that's one of the things I love about our partner, John Sumner. He was a former judge, family law judge in Cherokee. And John, in every conversation we have with them, always comes from a place of, what can I learn? What can I learn? Ego set aside, and he's a student for life. And I think when you're dealing with people, you need to, that's exactly the attitude you need to have. Now, Shawna, our client that had that hard day in court and got very little empathy from not forget empathy, care, or sense of you're important to the system and your issues and your concerns for your child are important. Your child's important to the system. They didn't get any of that. How do you not legally but emotionally? How do you recover from that?
And I don't know which one you're asking about when you say you, so let me address them both.
Yeah, you and her.
Yeah. First of all, there are a lot of times where I just sit with them outside of court and just hear them. I turned off the clock. I am no longer giving you counsel as legal advice. I'm sitting here with you and saying, yeah, you did not get what we came for, not necessarily what we wanted to ask for, but you did not get what you came for. You didn't get your hearing. You didn't get this, right? But we also reconvene. And I want to say it doesn't happen that often. It does happen when there are new judges that come aboard, right? That people don't know what they're going to do. And that may just be some experience of judges. I'm going to throw that out there. It is they don't really understand how to deal with the family law world yet. What our client had to really take into heart is there are going to be some things now that are completely out of my control. And I'm going to sit with those and do the best I can with those because I am under an order of the court to follow those. But first, we just sit there and we really felt the sadness. And I felt it with her. I think there are too many times that attorneys say, I don't get emotional. Well, no, you shouldn't intermesh your emotions with your clients. It's a horrible way to practice. But feeling the sadness for your clients, you gotta let them see that. Of course, we feel for you. We're in there fighting because we say, yeah, this is worth fighting for. Let's do this together. So I do think it is, for me, it is always a very sad day to not feel heard because I believe in the system so strongly. And as a lawyer, it hurts my soul. For a client, I think that they get kicked in the teeth yet again. But the ones that are successful at overcoming it, take it and they say, okay, I now know what they're not interested in hearing from me. What can I do to move on from this?
Yes. And I think that it's one of the most important decisions you got to make when you're selecting your representation.
Yeah.
Because you can't control the hand you're dealt with the judge you're going to get, right? You can't, you do what you can with that hand, but you can control the representation you get. And I hear a lot of times when we're initially speaking to a potential new client, they'll say something of the nature to me of, you've probably heard this 1,000 times, or I imagine you've heard crazier details or facts than what I'm about to share with you, but this is crazy to me. And that's when I have to say, stop right there. Everything you tell me is going to be unique about what you're telling me. I'm here fully for you. I'm not here to put your life on a scale to compare it to all the other lives we've worked with and say, is this worse, better, or crazier? This is, from your perspective, this is the most important thing in the world. So whoever you hire has to see it from that perspective, that this is the most important, life-changing, critical path in your life. And it is not a relative conversation to the last 10 cases or the next 10 cases. That is not our approach at all. And I think that is the key to hiring your representation, because yes, our client did not get that day in court where the judge showed any level of care or compassion and really any interest in the child and the family, but the client had an attorney that did. And that she can at least hang her hat on, that she made a decision that she doesn't need to regret for that.
And I do think that in that particular client's case, that because we're not done, strategy changed a little bit.
If I know you, you're definitely not done.
Oh,
You're not done.
Strategy changed a little bit. You know, when we have a new player, when we have new information that is added to our repertoire, we say, okay, now I know X. That's the X factor I have to account for. How do we move forward? We're here to represent our clients' best interest. There are a lot of ways, and we're just talking, in general about this judge, or there are a lot of ways to approach a bad actor or a bad safe person in your case. And it is done on a case-by-case basis. And I do think that the key to it really is going into it with the idea that the system is going to work for you.
Yes.
You cannot go into it thinking, they just said that one bad experience, we're going to have a bad experience, because that's going to frame the way you look at your case. It's going to frame how your case ends up. So yes, we can be disheartened by the system. As a lawyer, I'm sometimes very disheartened by the system. But the overall reaching of it, I really do believe most of us are trying our best. And I will give judges and guardians credit there. I think on a day-to-day basis, we're trying our best. I just go back to the one point. Today's Thursday, Sarah. So many clients I've talked to today will probably remember this day a lot better than today is Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really important every day when I'm at work and when judges are at work and guardians are at work to remember this isn't about you and what you want to hear and what's good for you and what you think about it.
And how you look.
Mm-hmm. This is about hearing these families and meeting them where they're at.
I love that, Shawna. We'll end it there.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.